Okay, this is the Lord of the Flies, pages 175 to 202 guided tour. Not that many. Actually, I should go back and look at that graphic. So this is Jekyll and Hyde. Okay, read this one back in college, and there are so many aspects of flipping back and forth on things going on in this thing, almost like multiple personalities or something like that going on in this book. Um, so many times we've got like they want this but they want that, they want this but they want that. So at the very end we come down to this big dramatic ending, and at the end they're charging in to try to, it seems like, capture and do their dance on Jack, and they have sharpened a stick at both ends for him when suddenly there's an officer right there of the military, and all of a sudden complete mind change. It's just they're just back and forth. They want to just have so much fun on this island, but they want to be rescued really, really bad. But they don't have enough confidence to believe in the rescue, so they've just got to have fun instead. It says so much about people. Anyway, people do seem to have a lot of Jekyll and a lot of Hyde. In the traditional sense of Jekyll and Hyde, Jekyll was this fine, upstanding man, and Hyde was this man who went out at night after taking the secret potion that Jekyll had discovered, and he would go out and do all of these horrible, unethical, immoral, terrible, vile things. And the concept was that there is a Mr. Hyde living inside of all Dr. Jekylls. And it does sound kind of like similar to Lord of the Flies. There's an evil inside of all people, kind of a thing. Gotta watch out for it, gotta keep it in check, kind of a thing. So anyway, thought I'd put it up there because after all, Lord of the Flies came out in the 1950s, British lit based, because of the kids being in Britain, all that sort of stuff. And here we are, Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, with something from British literature a lot earlier than that, from Lewis Stevenson. Okay, so background on this one is a artistic shape, and we've got a hawk, and we've got a tree, and we've got birds and stuff. But if you step back, it actually, this is not just a tree trunk. This is the shape of a human face right here, and this looks like the tree. The tree leaves look like the brain, and it's got the shape of all this stuff, and it's made out of nature. And the concept of it is human nature, and that's why it is the background for this slide, because human nature is predominantly what's going on this one. Ralph can't accept that they have lost all civility and intentionally killed Piggy. This is just a total shock to him, and it reveals the trusting nature of human beings, that we're so trusting that no, even after Piggy's dead, they didn't mean to do it. Somehow they couldn't have meant to do it. We feel like forgiving them. We feel like no, that didn't happen that way. Ralph runs back to the familiar. This is another human nature reveal. Runs all the way back across the island to the familiar to feel as close as possible to comforted. He goes back to the familiar. Okay, when you're totally alone and lost, you go back to the familiar. So we're predictable. This is the way people are. A lonely person will seek out community in some way. This is not really all that exciting or surprising, Mr. White. Yeah, we'll think about that in a few moments. Okay? Ralph talks to the twins who are on guard duty in the back. Right? He goes back and he finds the twins are there, and he starts trying to talk them into listening to him, and let him have a chance, and maybe we can work something out. You don't really like that, Jack, do you? And that kind of stuff. So he manages to get them to listen. But right, a question: if you just captured somebody and you held them against their will to stay, would you then put them on guard duty? It seems like they'd just leave when nobody was looking. That seems crazy. Why would they do that? Well, I guess you can't really hide on an island. Maybe that's it. But it seems suspicious. They promised to mislead Jack tomorrow. Oh, don't worry about it, Ralph. We'll mislead Jack tomorrow. In the morning, they can break that. They end up breaking that promise when Jack's enforcers begin hurting them, and they confirm his hide where he's hiding. That's what they call it in the military. And people cannot be trusted. This is one thing that's getting taught here. In general, loyalty of people is fickle at best. You can't blame the kids. We don't blame them for telling what they know because of what's happening to them. But because we don't blame them, that means don't trust people. They'll break. They'll expect it. They'll break on you. Don't trust them. But we don't like to say that in public. Is this an unwritten law or is this popular opinion? And what does that tell us? That okay, well, again, is it do we walk around going, yeah, everybody knows it. You can't really trust anybody. I mean, if anything got serious, somebody would just give you up, because it's every man for himself, right? It's normal. Okay, well, do we walk around saying that? Do we we acknowledge that's the case, but we don't say that. We don't teach that to our kids. We don't walk around talking about it like it's no big deal and everybody accepts it. If it's something that's hidden, it's like an unwritten law, that does tell us something about this behavior. Did Jack set this whole thing up? I said, we want to think about that later on. Well, seriously, we are predictable. A lonely person will seek community in some way. So he sends these two kids out on guard duty, knowing that a lonely person will, eventually seek community and eventually come back and talk to the twins. Was this all a setup from the very beginning from Jack? That's why I wanted to look at that earlier. Jack uses every method that has caused death on the island while hunting Ralph. He uses each and every single one. He uses fire, he uses boulder, and he tries to use hunting methods of surround and capture, but none of them work. It was only the fire that drives Ralph out, but it also works on the hunters because they're not able to see him leave, and it gives him enough of a get out so that he gets a little ways away before they realize he's off and running, and then they have to chase him. So fire works on both. The author keeps us on this fence of judgment on all of the deaths, What level of responsibility is there for each of the deaths? When we have the kids just being kids running up the hill to light the fire all happy and stuff, and then they end up lighting it and they build it up too high as kids are wont to do because they just do it, and it ends up getting out of control and oh my gosh, it burns up a little one. That was an accident, but was it an accident? We've already talked about this in one of my other videos. Hey, man, you were told not to do it. It was told by Piggy, but you were told not to do it. You did it, and then it resulted in a death. Usually that means somebody is responsible to some level. Usually we hold people to responsible for that. Want to know why? Well, look what happens when you don't. These deaths are so carefully designed. They're so meticulously written with such detail to happen in a way that makes the reader want to feel confused about responsibility. And as we don't know how to feel or what is the best thing to do in each of the situations, we just observe them, and then we realize that the characters, the kids, they feel the same way. And so nothing happens. But something does happen. When nothing happens, something does happen. People die, and people that are at least partially responsible get away with it. Because, well, yeah, it's probably partially responsible on the kids and probably not. We're just going to let them get away with it. That's not good, because now looking back, they've learned from it. You can do that and get away with it. They'll do it again. And now it's not accident. Now it's expected by them that you can get away with it when you do it that way. Well, it happened before. We did it before, and we got away with it before. No, it was no trouble before, right? Right. So this is a very complicated comparison designed by the writer to get us to notice how some behaviors must result in consequences, even if complete responsibility Or there's the potential of wiggle out of it with clever argument. Or there's connections. They're highly connected. They know people. Or whatever other methods exist that these behaviors must not be allowed to continue. There's certain ones. There's certain things that are just, you can't let them keep going. We just can't. And we got to punish somebody even if it's like, well, I'm only a little bit responsible. The rest was accident. And so you can't really, identify how much I'm responsible. So you can't really, blame this on me. How much you can blame on accident? And they try to get out of it, right? Well, if they can get out of it, it's going to happen again. You have to hold them responsible. And that may be uncomfortable to some people who are all about human rights. And they're like, hey, man, if you can't prove they did it, and you're still saying that accident was partially the cause, then you can't punish this guy. Okay, well, that's bad. Going in that direction results in this story. That's what the author is saying. Going in that direction results in this story. It's unfortunate that a small amount of personal rights must be infringed so that this level of destruction is not released on everyone. And not all British people will agree, but this is a hugely, or especially was in the 1950s, hugely popular sentiment in Britain. You give up a little bit of your rights, a little bit of your privileges, a little bit of your whatever for the greater good of all. And it was extremely well accepted during World War II, of course. So going into the 50s, when this book was written, it was still strong then. Okay, background on this. We got a whining, crying baby. That's the back one, and it's just an illustration, because I don't want to see the real thing. That'd make me sad. Jack is going to get away with it. All right, let's just get the cat out of the bag. That's what the guided tour is about. This is not a summary. This is all the different concepts and things we got to point at. Jack is going to get away with this, and that's why it happens in society. Because the Jacks in society, they can obscure their responsibility and confuse it. Well, there's other elements and other factors involved, so they don't get punished. They just get excused, and then it just keeps going. And that's why it happens. So this author is really being critical of that. Because there was not some adult, or you can call it adult, you can call it government, you can call it a lot of different things. If there was not leadership, whatever, who will infringe upon personal rights when necessary to make sure that those partially responsible still face some type of consequence? If this doesn't happen, if we don't have these people, then so people know that they can't get away with this stuff, it's just going to keep happening. While Jack has attained the epitome of hunter, all right, he is the best hunter, and now he's even hunting bigger game, obviously, game with real intelligence, etc., opposable thumbs, and all of the same weapons and everything that he has. He has lost all ability to realize his miserable, and we got to use that word, miserable failure, already pointed out to him by Piggy, of the concepts of husbandry and rescue and survival. Husbandry is making sure that we have. This is an island. When you run out of firewood, where are you getting more? The island produced it. You have to reserve. You have to conserve a certain amount. Okay. Same thing with rescue. You've got to conserve a certain amount of firewood for rescue. Okay, not just cooking. You've got to conserve a certain amount of firewood for survival. You've got to eat only so many fruits. You got to kill so many pigs. You've got to spread this out. You've got to thin this out, and you've got to try and make things last right now. Because that's the whole concept of husbandry. And survival and rescue is, you've got, your first and foremost thing is to use as little energy as possible surviving so that you can last as long as possible until you are rescued, right? And he is wasting great deals of energy, right? When all seems lost, Ralph bursts from the bushes and finds a naval commanding officer and his security calmly looking at him. Behind them, the incredible reassurance of a Navy patrol cruiser Order is instantly restored, and all the kids turn into whining babies. That's why this is on the background here. This is allegorical. This is like the story that represents another story of to many people who break all codes of conduct, and then they whine and they cry when they're caught, and the poor thing went through such a terrible experience. You can't blame them. We know that they do that too, and that's also part of the game. And it helps excuse why if we know they do that, why do we allow that to excuse? If we know excusing is going to result in this, why do we excuse? We know it is bad, yet we read it and agree with it. The important thing is to get all the kids off the island that is ablaze and get them somewhere that they can be cared for. There is a war going on. This is a warship. They can't play investigator. They can't play nanny. So we know that it's bad, but we also understand that under conditions you're going to have to just move on, which is why things like this will happen under conditions. A very childish ending. It gets the characters all wrapped up in this nearly deadly match right at the very end, and then they wake up, and then all of a sudden the authority sets in. Mom steps out from behind the wall and saves everybody, the good boy from the bad boys, right? There's always a way of stopping all of the conflict and getting out of it. This is like the childish ending you'd expect from little kids writing a novel, but it's incredibly well crafted and highly intelligent and well used right here. Because that childish ending, to be suddenly rescued and not have to tie up all of the loose ends and to make all of the jacks responsible, that's why jacks happen. That's why Lord of the Flies happen, because people let it. Simple as that. They excuse it. The whining, crying baby, they were in such a difficult time. It wasn't entirely their fault that Simon came in right in the middle of all of that. And, so it's partially Simon's fault, right? How about Piggy? Well, they could have rolled that rock and hit anybody, even their own guys. So I think they were just all worked up, and yeah, that means it's an accident, but it's like, you caused the death of another person, so it's a very, very serious accident, but it's an accident. No, man, no. We just keep excusing accident after accident after accident after accident. And this guy, being a old, mean, nasty school teacher, is going to say, no, man, you don't excuse some of this stuff. You can't. If people complain that the old, mean schoolmaster exists, well, they exist for a reason. And I'll finish reading that out here. So we make excuses this ending's okay when it really should not be. We will accept it as okay anyway, proving it all happens and people know it and let it happen. So we need our adults, our grouchy mean teachers, our authority figures to impinge a little if necessary to keep the beast at bay. That's the best way to say it. That's why I wrote it instead of did it from memory. One of the classic British mottos, give of the self for the betterment of society, right? We have to step up and we have to hold responsible, otherwise the Lord of the Flies happens, and it will keep happening, and it's in our nature. It comes from inside of us, and the only way to keep it in check is for somebody to say, nope, you don't let things like this happen. Once they start, it's a very slippery slope. All right, we're going to have some more things on the essay, potentially some more videos and some more resources. We'll see. Keep you posted. That's the end for the guided tour 175 to 202.